What's up, ladies and gentlemen? You're on another episode of Alive. This is our fourth one, I do believe, and it feels good to be back. I'm really trying to get this sound quality up to par, but you know what? We're just going to roll with what we got from now on. I don't like taking all this time in between videos, so we're just going to start rolling with it. So we're going to jump into another topic today. Now, the topic today is going to be the natural laws. But before we jump into that, remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications when the next video comes out. And, just support. But also, I'd like to recommend something, a couple of books for, those that are interested in Christian apologetics. I would recommend these two books right off the bat. First one is The Case for Christ, which is my second time reading it, but it is an awesome book. It's got a lot of evidence in it. I mean, it can really help you defend your faith with logic, reasoning. Okay, so The Case for Christ, and they also got a movie to this. So if you're not the reader type, you don't want to read books, you don't like reading books, they got the movie to it. It's an awesome movie, and it's a true story too as well. It's about an atheist who was a journalist, reporter. His wife became a Christian. He wanted to show her basically how stupid she was and ignorant she was for believing in Christ. So he started doing his own investigation. It took him about 2 years of investigating the case for Christ. And he got to a point where he was like, this stuff is real. So I recommend the movie and the book, The Case for Christ. It's a great one. Another book that I recommend, oh, by the way, this book is by Lee Strobel. Great guy. Another one that I recommend is Evidence That Demands a Verdict. Now, this is my first time reading this book. I'm almost done with it. This book has so much evidence in it. It's insane how much evidence is in this book, The Case for Christ. And the author is Josh McDowell. So check this book out. They don't have a movie about it, but I mean, if you're a reader, I strongly recommend this book right here. It's called The Evidence That Demands a Verdict, and the evidence in it is overwhelming, to say the least. Those are my two recommendations as far as books go. So now, let's jump into this topic. So, we're going to discuss the natural laws, okay? So the question is, where do the natural laws come from? Aristotle, who was around 324 BC, I do believe, Aristotle said the natural laws come from the unmoved mover, which he called the final causality, okay? Now, Aristotle did believe that the universe was eternal. He believed it had no beginning, no end. But at the same time, Aristotle also believed there had to be something outside of the universe that was holding it all together and making it work. Okay, and that's actually what the scriptures say. The scriptures talk about, how Jesus holds everything together, basically. So, but we're going to jump into the laws of the natural laws. The reason why we're going to jump into that is because, in my personal opinion, and many others share this personal opinion of mine, the natural laws are very good evidence for God's existence. So if we think logically and reasonably, you can only come to the conclusion that there has to be a creator, there has to be a God. So what are the natural laws? The natural laws are gravity, electromagnetism, weak and stronger nuclear, or weak and stronger physics. So those are the natural laws. And the question is, where do they come from? Everything in nature is goal directed. Okay. In fact, science requires nature to be goal directed. Look at it this way. An acorn always becomes an oak tree. It doesn't become a cedar tree. It doesn't become a pine tree. It doesn't become any other tree. It always becomes an oak tree. Now, the acorn's not conscious. It's not a conscious thinking being. The acorn isn't saying, you know what, today I have to become an oak tree. It's just not doing that. So why is it that it always becomes an oak tree instead of some other tree? Because the inner workings of the acorn is goal directed to become an oak tree. Similarly, like me and you, our bodies are goal directed, all right? Our anatomy is goal directed. Every few seconds, you're creating 4 million new red blood cells. And you're not sitting there thinking, I got to create new red blood cells. I got to create new red blood cells. No, your body is just doing it every few seconds. You're having a free will thought, okay? We all have free will thoughts. We all have thoughts, all right? Now, in order to have a free will thought, neurons have to be firing. And they have to be firing consistently, constantly, and perfectly. In order for neurons to fire, atoms have to be working constantly, consistently, perfectly. In order for atoms to be doing what they do consistently and perfectly, the natural laws must be constantly doing what they do consistently and perfectly. The question is, where do natural laws come from? A thought comes from neurons firing. Neurons firing come from atoms. Atoms come from the natural laws working. But where do the natural laws come from? Again, Aristotle said it was the unmoved mover. Got a couple quotes for you. Because everything in the universe is goal directed. If it wasn't, we would cease to exist. Period. If anything was off just a little bit, we'd all cease to exist. Atheist astronomer Fred Hoyle says, a common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The temptation to believe that the universe is a product of some sort of design, a manifestation of subtle aesthetic and mathematical judgments, is overwhelming. The belief that there is something behind it all is one I personally share with the majority of scientists. Now that's Albert Einstein saying that. Albert Einstein saying the belief that there's something behind it all is a personal belief that he shares. And not only did he say with scientists, he said with the majority of scientists. So it would appear to me that he's saying a majority of scientists agree and share the opinion that there's a mind behind it all. Now, let's go to another one that we have. This is from Stephen Hawkins, or Stephen Hawkins, however you say it, Stephen Hawkins. He said, and this is true, if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back onto itself and never developed galaxies. In other words, we wouldn't be here. Now, to add to that, if the gravitational force was altered by 1 part in 10, galaxies would cease to exist. Therefore, we would as well. All right? Well, stars wouldn't be able to be created. So we wouldn't be here. If the gravitational force was altered by 1 part in 10, that's nuts. So look at it this way. Let's say you take a ruler. You have a ruler, okay? Like a 12-inch ruler. But no, let's make it not a 12-inch ruler. It's an infinity ruler, all right? The ruler stretches clear across the known universe, all right? And you take gravity and you place it on an inch. If you move that gravity 1 inch in either direction, everything would cease to exist. That's insanely precise. That doesn't happen by coincidence. It doesn't happen by accident, by chaos randomly selecting itself. It doesn't happen. This is design at its finest. The anthropic principle is pretty much the same. This ties in with the universe being goal-directed. Excuse me, being goal-directed. All right, this ties in with that, which is called the anthropic principle, which is also the same thing as the watchmaker analogy. Now, if you've never heard of the watchmaker analogy, check that out. It's really interesting. But it's the watchmaker analogy is the same thing pretty much as the anthropic principle. Now, the anthropic principle, I got the definition of it right here, and I can't remember things great, so I'm just going to read it to you. The anthropic principle is a group of principles attempting to determine how statistically probable our observations of the universe are, given that we could only exist in a particular type of universe to start with. Anthropic reasoning is often used to deal with the notion that the universe seems to be fine-tuned. Now, let me ask you something. Can chaos finely tune something? Let me ask you this. If I'm playing a guitar, I'm sitting there playing a good old guitar and I'm getting down, all right, and it sounds beautiful. And you say, wow, whoever tuned that guitar did a great job. It sounds great. And I said, oh, it just accidentally happened. It just randomly happened. It's perfect. Every note, every string is perfect. But it just tuned itself. It just happened. It just tuned itself. You would probably say I'm crazy. You would say, Cody, there's no way that guitar tuned itself and got that perfect. No way. Somebody tuned it. Period. And that's what the anthropic principle is about. Because the anthropic principle is the principles that show the universe is finely tuned. Down to the T. Extremely tuned. So in order for the universe to be fine-tuned, there has to be a tuner. In order for the guitar to be tuned perfectly, every note, there has to be a tuner. So in order for the universe to be fine-tuned, there has to be a tuner, period. It doesn't happen randomly on accident through a bunch of chaos. It just doesn't. It's impossible. Plant life comes from plant life. All right? Animal life comes from animal life, okay? Human life comes from human life, all right? You never have the animate selecting itself from the inanimate. It doesn't happen, guys. It's impossible, all right? Period. Now, let's talk about something else that I think is very interesting. Now, this is a chicken and egg dilemma for a lot of atheists, all atheists, actually. So if you're not familiar with the chicken and egg dilemma, I'll just go ahead and say that real quick. The chicken and egg dilemma is, which one came first, the chicken or the egg? Christians, or anybody that believes in God, would say the chicken came first. God created the chicken, and then the chicken was able to have eggs, and then so forth and so forth and so forth, all right? Now, atheists have a problem there, because they don't have a God that created things. They don't have that. So they have a problem. Which one came first, the chicken or the egg? But that's not the only chicken and the egg dilemma that they have. They have many, many dilemmas like this that they cannot account for. They can't explain. One of my favorite ones is this. So protein is the building blocks of life, okay? They are the building blocks of life. Now, proteins are created in little bitty factories called ribosomes or ribosomes, however you want to say it. I say ribosomes. Proteins are created in a little bitty factory called ribosomes. Now, ribosomes are made out of proteins. So the question is, which one came first, proteins or the ribosomes? Ribosomes or the proteins? You have another chicken and the egg dilemma. Now, we as Christians would say God created the whole entire human body at one time. You can't look at the eyeball, the eye. The eye is so complex. If one little thing was taken out of it, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You can't evolve an eye to become what it is today without anything, any part of the eye. It doesn't work, okay? So it had to be created at the same time. The whole human body was created at the same time. Good questions to ask people that believe in evolution and atheists that believe in evolution. Good questions to ask them are questions like, okay, so, because most of them believe we were fish. They believe we were fish and came up out of the water and evolved into primates and then evolved into men. The great questions to ask are, when we came out of the water, did we have gills or lungs? Did our gills evolve into lungs? Or how about this? Before we had a throat, how did we swallow food? Or how about this? Before we had our digestive system, how did we digest food? These are things that atheists and evolution believers have an extremely difficult time answering. Typically they can't answer it. And when they do try to answer it, it's the most wildest answer you'll ever hear. Because you can't have, you just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work, all right? And you take any piece of the eye out, the eyeball doesn't work, okay? It just doesn't. It all has to be created simultaneously at the same time, period. And then going back to the chicken and egg dilemmas, the one that I named about the ribosomes and the proteins, there's countless dilemmas just like that. And they have to deal with these questions. They can't, you know what I mean? They can't just keep running around them. You got to deal with these questions. But anyways, the main goal for this topic today was to show you that there is something called the natural laws. And in order for there to be laws, there has to be a lawgiver. The anthropic principle shows that the universe is finely tuned. In order for anything to be finely tuned, there has to be a fine tuner. Okay? Let me give you one more example. Actually, I'll give you two more. No charge. This is free. Nah, playing. So, you come across the beaver dam. All right? You say, whoa, something created that, which was the beaver. Then you come across the Golden Gate Bridge, and you say, something way more intelligent than the beaver created that thing. Why? Because the complexity of the design, okay? Now, if you look at the universe, how much more complex in its design is it than the Golden Gate Bridge or anything that man has created? I mean, it beats it by a long shot. The complexity of the universe is on a whole nother level, levels that we can't even comprehend. So how much more intelligent is the cause behind the universe? You see what I'm saying? Another thing, people try to say, well, evolution can bring about design and order. Impossible, okay? If me and you are walking along the ocean, and we see ripples in the sand, and you say to me, whoa, wow, how did those ripples get there? I would say the water brushing up on the sand caused those ripples. Now, if we're walking down the beach and we see Taylor Loves Joanne, and you said, wow, how did that get there? And I said, the waves of the water spelled that out. It happened naturally. You would call me nuts. You'd say I'm crazy. Why? Because when we read Taylor Loves Diane, we see complexity in that. We see design and order in that. Okay? Same thing with the universe. We see complex design. So there must be a complex designer. Okay? Do you follow me? So, you know, if you really look at this stuff and think logically and reasonably, it only leaves one answer. There is a creator. There's a God. Now listen, I want to say something before I go. Oftentimes, I hear people say, oh, you're going to go pray to your daddy in the sky. Bro, listen. Anybody that says daddy in the sky or sky daddy or daddy in the clouds, especially that sky daddy, that anybody that says something like that, you do not understand what we believe at all, period. Because we know that God isn't a sky daddy, or he's not some daddy in the clouds. We know that God is spirit. I just made a status about this. This is spiritual. spiritual. This is spiritual. God is spirit. Okay? Outside of the universe. That's another thing. That's another thing. You say Sky Daddy as if we believe God is in the clouds inside the no. No. He's spirit, and not only is he spirit, he is outside of the universe. He's outside of time, matter, and all of that. Okay? So whenever you say that, you sound very ignorant to what we believe. I just want to say that real quick. And I'm sorry if I hurt some of y'all's feelings for that, but you sound ignorant, all right? Because we don't believe in a Sky Daddy. We believe in a spirit that is eternal, okay? So anyways, that's my thing for today. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to wrap it up and leave it at that. Listen, I apologize for the long waits between the videos. Like I said, I'm just really trying to get this sound quality to sound much better. But since I'm having so many difficulties with the sound quality, I'm just going to start rolling with it. All right. If you can't hear me, I apologize. If it's too loud, I apologize. But I don't like taking so much time in between videos. So I'm just going to start rolling with it. All right. And my arsenal is full. I got so much to talk about. So keep on hanging out with me. Come back again. Remember to hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. I need y'all to subscribe. I need support, all right? So show some love, like, share, subscribe, and also comment. Comment on the YouTube video. Let's have a discussion in the comments. And, and you can ask questions, and you can even debate, So it's all welcomed here. So do that. And then I will see you guys on the next rip. It's been a good one. I hope you guys learned something today. Remember what I'm telling you about the natural laws. There must be a lawgiver. About the anthropic principle. For there to be a finely tuned anything, there has to be a tuner. Remember these things. All right. So I'll see you on the next rip. All right. Peace and love. Mwah.